people have the wherewithal to spend. It's whether or not they're in the mood to spend that we're watching here, and we don't know how much sentiment really plays a role here. I think there's a certain frozenness, if I may, to the economy right now. There's not a lot of hiring necessarily going on, and we'll get that number Friday. But we're not seeing the firing either.
It's been interesting with earnings because everybody is suspending their guidance for the full year. They don't know what's going to happen.
I've never seen anything like this.
What to me is most amazing, though, is you hear most companies, I think, saying that they've been okay, even recently, that things are still hanging in there. The companies that don't are the ones that are getting punished in the stock market. If you say things have been weak in the first few weeks of this quarter, if you say things were getting worse at the end of the last quarter, those are the stocks that are getting punished.
And we want to be careful.
I would say the majority of them are saying things are still okay right now.
We want to be careful, too, because, if the companies are not clear about their outlook, how good are the economic forecasts right now? We showed you that they have come down quite a bit. They were right in terms of their tracking forecast, but that has data in it.
Yeah.
But we don't know. A second quarter is probably a pretty good idea that there'll be some kind of bounce back from this number. But it's the third and fourth quarter that are the ones that are questioned. I think that's why companies are withholding that guidance right now, because they don't have that visibility on their books for the next beyond, say, several months.
Steve, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Very quickly follow up. President Trump said there's 200 trade deals. When are we going to see details of these deals? We have yet to see anything.
So the trade deals are making good progress, and the negotiating teams are hard at work moving those forward. I've been impressed with the progress.
What does good progress mean? Just to make sure I understand what you're saying, what does good progress mean? So it's not actually finished. It's just they're going back and forth.
Yeah, so they've got outlines of deals with a number of countries that are pretty close to the finish line, and it's just hammering out some details. And I expect those details to start coming out in coming days and weeks. And I think that everyone's going to be impressed with the Well, we've received written offers from almost 20 countries, and those are the countries that we're prioritizing the negotiations.
Can you name a few, just to be more specific?
I'm afraid I can't. Look, I'm not a trade negotiator. I'm not directly involved in the negotiations myself. We're economists here at the Council of Economic Advisors. But I have been party to some of the talks, and I've been impressed with what's happening.
Okay, good. Just looking for information, but I understand you're in a different position than actually being the trade negotiators. Stephen, Myron, thank you so much for coming on the show and telling us what you can.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, Christine, GDP shrank in the first quarter of this year. What is the significance of that, and how does that impact everyday Americans?
So it's the first time the economy didn't grow since the pandemic, and so that is remarkable for its timing. And it was growing strongly at the end of last year. So this is the brakes, hitting the brakes on the American economy. And when you look in the formula that you use to figure out gross domestic product, all of these imports ahead of his tariffs, record amounts of imports in some categories coming in here as people were stockpiling ahead of tariffs. That distorted this number, and so that's why it's so negative. You also had government spending fall because of DOGE, and they're cutting government spending. And remember, this is a rearview mirror picture. This is the first 3 months of the year, so this is before the biggest of the Trump tariffs started to bite.
So does that mean it could get even worse?
It could, or it could bounce back. We really don't know what's going to happen. I mean, this trade policy is so upsetting of the apple cart. It's unclear what's going to happen next. We did see a private sector payroll number today that was very, very weak. There's a government jobs number on Friday. Every one of these numbers we're going to be parsing to see just what are the effects on the economy of this very big, different trade change from the president.
Gabe, how is the White House framing this economic news?
Well, hi there, Anna. Well, the Trump administration has repeatedly tried to look backwards in many ways when the stock market is not as high as they would like it to be. They've been blaming the Biden administration for leaving them with poor economic conditions, even though inflation had already started to cool. Now, just a few moments ago, President Trump posting on social media that, quote, "This is Biden's stock market, not Trump's. I didn't take over until January 20th. Tariffs will soon start kicking in, and companies companies are starting to move into the U.S. And then further down, this will take a while. This has nothing to do with tariffs, only that he left us with bad numbers. Be patient, he tells his supporters. However, if you look to January of 2024, the president posted on social media that this is the Trump stock market because my polls against Biden are so good. So again, that makes the point that the president has a long history of taking credit for the stock market when it is up and trying to deflect blame for it when it's lower than he'd like.
Okay, so Gabe just did the fact check there for us. Susan, can Trump really get away with saying this isn't my economy? This has nothing to do with my tariffs?
Well, Trump's been very good at getting away with those kind of statements for 8 years now. But the difference is now, Anna, for 4 years before he took the presidency back, he was able to say anything without accountability. He wasn't president. Now as president, people will hold him accountable. His words matter more, whether it's to CEOs or people just planning their mom and pop stores, like if they have to worry about what's coming into the country in tariffs. So his words matter more, and people will hold him accountable, as we've seen, frankly, in a whole spate of different polling recently.
And Christine, bottom line, this is his economy, no?
Yeah, I mean, he says he wants to remake it, and this is what happens when you want to remake it. I mean, it's remarkable, the collapse in container traffic coming from China to the United States. These are the two world's biggest economies. That will have ripple effects. I've been doing, checks of freight companies and trucking companies, and the layoffs have already begun there. And you've got a lot of small companies, especially small retailers, independent retailers, who are not ordering for back to school and not ordering for the fall season, and they don't know if they'll be in business for Christmas. Those are Main Street jobs with all kinds of other attendant jobs that go with them. So there's a lot of economic activity that we're going to see how this plays out. And the president is determined that tariffs are a good thing, and he is going to remake sort of this balance of global trade.
He was talking a lot about the tariffs last night at that rally. He's about to sit down next hour with his cabinet. This is day 101, Gabe. How does this news impact their agenda?
Well, look, a lot of what we'll be focusing on during this cabinet meeting in the next hour or so is whether Elon Musk will be there. Of course, Elon Musk heading up Doge. His time within the government is supposedly coming to an end. Chief of Staff Susie Wiles, in an interview with the New York Post that was published yesterday, said that Elon Musk is no longer regularly working physically inside the White House, that he's been doing some of his work by phone. So it is unclear right now whether he will be at this cabinet meeting today, but that's something we'll be watching. We're also hoping to get more information on this discussion of trade deals with other countries. We've been hearing different accounts over the last several days about how far along they are. Several Trump administration officials saying they may be close to a deal with India, perhaps Japan. So that's something that we hope to learn more about as the day progresses and as we're getting this new economic news that you just referenced.
Gabe, thanks so much. Keep us posted. Peter, what are you hearing about Trump's mindset as he is exiting the honeymoon phase of his final term in office? Are the economic realities starting to sink in?
Well, look, I think he is, counseling patience, which I think is a particularly unusual advice from the most impatient person we can think of, right? This is a man who lives very short term, lives, as my colleague Maggie Haberman once put it, from 5 minutes to 5 minutes. And now he's trying to tell the country, yeah, okay, there's some short term pain here, but we're going to get to this golden age that he promised in the inauguration. And the question is whether or not the country is willing to go along with that. The country, elected him with the idea that he was a master steward of the economy, that he was going to make prices go down. That obviously hasn't happened. I think the people thought that when he came in, the economy would get better, not worse.
First off, again, the results of perceived and prospective tariffs have not gone into effect yet. But the regulations that have been reduced under this administration already, the energy policy, the fact that we secured the border, the fact that fentanyl is now no longer coming in. It was coming in droves, tons, during the Biden administration. They did nothing about it.
Why are you saying tariffs are not in effect?
There's a couple of it because we did a 90-day pause on them. And of course, with China, there is, but we're managing the situation. The president is.
They're still at 10%. There's still
most of them were at 10% during the course of the Biden administration.
China's the biggest trading partner. That's like the big kahuna right there.
That's right. Brianna, we have not experienced any inflation as of yet. Again, it's at 2.4% because of the perceived and some of the tariffs that have already gone into effect. I'm going to grant you that. I'm not going to argue that point. The tariffs triggered a sell-off within the markets and certainly have sent a rattle through the economy. The president wanted to fix this problem. He got the world's attention. He's got over 170 nations already coming in to talk about real trade deals. And China is waking up to the fact that they need to also come to the table. Now, back to your question about having a Pennsylvania first approach. Yes, I believe in strong public safety. I believe in strong economy. I believe in Pennsylvania should be the most competitive market in the world. We're an energy producing state. We currently have a governor and the previous governor that hated natural gas and put all kinds of restrictions upon them and has not created any competitive nature for small business within our great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. As a matter of fact, Pennsylvania is number 35, number 36, number 37 in most business categories, but shamefully it's actually 37 in education, where we continually spend more and get worse and worse results over time. Pennsylvania needs a big turnaround, and that's what I meant by stating we need a governor, could be myself, that runs things in a decisive manner, such as a Ron DeSantis and a Greg Abbott, to truly maximize quality of life and economic opportunities for our citizens.
And then how do you mitigate the prices of groceries are up, even though Trump says they're down? There are. I mean, you see there are effects of tariffs. I know you're saying there aren't any, but there are.
I'm not saying there aren't any. They're more perceived than real at this moment in time.
We are out of time, unfortunately. We're going to leave it there. They are in effect. I just don't want to leave our viewers with the impression that they are not in effect. There is a pause on the so-called reciprocal tariffs, but they're still at 10%, and China is still very, very, very high.
Listen to the business types, guys. These tend to be the sorts of people that are more pro-Republican. I don't want to stereotype being like, oh, all business people are far right, nah. But like, it's traditionally the case that like the stock market type bros usually were more Republican. That they wanted to support the Republican Party, both because the Republican Party was the anti-worker party, the anti-environment party, the anti-regulation party, and that's generally good for business. Generally, right? Because if you don't have to pay your workers as much, you can pollute the rivers and you can put not check your food for poison or whatnot. That's more profit for you, right? That's why they love Republicans, but also because generally the Republicans were more the party of free trade. You know, both parties were neoliberal in that sense, both free trade parties, but the Republicans were a party of free trade. And when Trump came in, they just didn't believe he was going to do tariffs. They didn't. They said, Trump's going to be a pretty normal Republican. He's going to do some tariffs. Yes, he did say he's going to put some on China. Sometimes tariffs aren't devastating. And then this is them now realizing what they've done. They've elected a man. It doesn't matter if you're a Wall Street guy, how much tax breaks he gives you, how many unions he busts, how many wages he helps lower. It doesn't matter. When you're losing as much money as you're losing, the bribes that a president gives the capitalist class, it doesn't make up for it. You're better off paying Bernie Sanders' 1%, 5% wealth tax, depending on how much money you have. You'd be further ahead. And like the economy is going towards a recession. Technically, the definition of a recession, it has to shrink in 2 consecutive quarters, and it hasn't been 2 quarters yet. But it shrunk 1 quarter, and it's going to the next. The U.S. by this summer will be in a recession, and the capitalist class is going to blame a Republican, if you can believe it.